Welcome to Morning Scone. Glad to be part of your daily wake-up call here. As always, like, share, tell a friend, subscribe. Please, if you don't already subscribe to this channel. About a little basketball edition of Morning Scone. Pels in the playoffs. They beat San Antonio in the regular season finale. They secure the 6th seed. How tightly contested was everything in the West this year? Amazing when you look at the standings. The Pels finished with the same record as the Thunder and the Jazz. All three are 48 and 34, but the Pels lose the three-way tiebreaker, so they fall into the 6th seed. But you know what? I am perfectly fine with that because the Pels have what is probably the most favorable matchup for the Pels in the first round with the series against Portland starting on Saturday in Portland. I'll talk about that in just a second. First, though, the game last night. Last night was a lot of fun. It's a home game against the Spurs. All their history over the last 20 years that the Spurs have been just a model franchise in the NBA. And the last time the Pels and the Spurs played, New Orleans scored 93 points. This high-flying offense that's been running without Boogie, AD taking over, they lost 98-93. Last night, it's 61 in the first half. I mean, it was just go, 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 score the basketball. And it was so fun to watch, man. When you look at stat lines like AD pulled in last night with 28 points, 15 rebounds, 4 blocks, 3 steals, he's just playing at a level right now that nobody can contend with him. So can he pace the Pelicans to a series win? We'll see. Against Portland, which we'll talk about in a second, I think so. But maybe the most impressive thing, too, Drew Holiday had 19 points last night, but Drew Holiday should be on the NBA All-Defensive team, which is another reason why I give him a shot against Portland. And then the other thing that's happened in the last 5 games, since Mirotic shaved his beard, he has scored at least 21 points in each of the last 5 games, of course coinciding with him shaving the beard and trying to change things up a little bit. By the way, if you watched the game last night, he was clean-shaven again. So it wasn't like he shaved it and was going to regrow it. He shaved again, so he's sticking with it if that's what's going to work. So fun to watch, man. AD and Drew have this awesome rapport right now. 3 alley-oop dunks. One in the fourth quarter was a reverse alley-oop dunk. He had this sort of it's like windmill type dunk as well. It's fun to watch. They're winning. Fans are going to come to the arena for this series and give the Pelicans a true home court advantage. And guys like AD and Drew and Boogie from the bench are going to get to feel what it's like when New Orleans, or South Louisiana for that matter, is into it, is passionate, cares, how fun that can be. You can tell I'm fired up because it has literally been a decade. It's been 10 years since the then Hornets won a playoff series when they beat Dallas in the first round and then went to the 7th game against San Antonio in the Western Conference semis. And that was so much fun, man. The NBA playoffs are great, man, and it's good that your team is in it and they got a chance to contend, not obviously for the West because nobody's going to beat San Antonio or Houston, but Golden State or Houston. But man, to have a chance to win an opening round series, to feel like you got a shot, is pretty awesome. And the reason I really like New Orleans in the series, now look, Portland's got home court advantage in the series, and I'm not going to minimize that. And they've got 2 superstars with Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum. But 2 reasons why I think the Pelicans can win this series. Number 1, of course, is Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis will be the best player on the court for either team. And typically in series like this, the team with the best player is going to win. You've seen it with LeBron for years. Now, granted, the East is weak, and some of those first-round matchups are just a joke, where they'll just sleepwalk through and win 4 games and have a few days off. But there's nobody on Portland's team that can adequately match up with AD. So that, because he's the best player and they don't have anyone that can even control him. See, Utah does. That's why Utah's a bad matchup. You got to like the Pelicans. The other is because Drew Holiday is playing at an all-NBA defensive team level, you feel like he can take away at least one of the perimeter scoring options, whether he locks down Lillard or McCollum. And I don't know if he locks him down entirely, but the fact that he can get out there and defend at a high level is one of the reasons that the Pels have had success against Portland this season. So I know the last time they played, Portland beat New Orleans in New Orleans. If you remember, though, that was at the end of that 5 games in 6 days, and then they had a night off, and it was just like, man, the gas tank was empty. So I'd almost flush that one. But this may sound like a gigantic homer pick, and maybe it is, but I think New Orleans will beat Portland in this series. And I think they do it in 6 because I don't want to see it go to 7 back in Portland, but I think they can win one of those first 2 and then come back and win it in New Orleans. So fingers crossed that they take care of business, man. It'd be an awful lot of fun to see the Pels win a series and advance in the playoffs and get people really excited about the NBA in New Orleans again. I mentioned it was sort of an all basketball morning scone. The spring signing period started yesterday for basketball. Emmett Williams inked for LSU, but that was hardly the biggest news. The bigger news was that Brandon Sampson declared for the draft. He has hired an agent. This I know that surprised some people. We actually talked about it Monday on AFR, and okay, maybe I knew beforehand, but it's one of those things where I think Brandon Sampson struggled to adapt to Will Wade's style. The early morning boot camp workouts, and that's not for everybody, man. And if you look at the guys that took his minutes after his injury, you look at Darrell Edwards and you look at Randy Onwasser. Those were guys that Wade brought in, that he handpicked to bring in as transfer players to contribute last year, and they did. So as for Sampson, look, I mean, he was a top 50 player in the country coming out of high school when he signed with LSU in that class with Ben Simmons and Antonio Blakeney. When he signed, I doubt very seriously that Sampson ever thought he'd spend 3 years in college, but he did. And I think he's a super athletic perimeter player that can get to the goal and score. At 6'5", he's got a long wingspan. He can defend the perimeter. He wasn't totally proficient at it at LSU. Maybe that was an effort thing, but he can do it. So with athleticism out on the perimeter. So I think if you're just building a pro player, a prospect, I mean, he fits the mold more than maybe anybody on LSU's team last year. That includes Tremont Waters. And I know Tremont Waters was the best player on the team, but there aren't too many 5'10" point guards in the NBA. There just aren't. So I get why Sampson is going. I mean, if you want to go and some guys just want to go and make money, and if he doesn't get drafted, maybe he gets into the G League, follows the path Antonio Blakeney did, where played really hard, was the G League Rookie of the Year, averaged 32 points a game, made the Bulls roster, kind of spent time with both this year, the Bulls and the G League team. Maybe that's the path Sampson's looking to carve out for himself, because I think realistically he understands he's not going to get drafted. But if some guys just want to go pro, and if you have to go overseas, I'll go play in Italy, make $200,000 tax-free, and live on the Italian coast. That ain't a bad living until you feel like you've honed your skills enough maybe to give the NBA another shot. So good luck to Brandon Sampson. But the other side of that is now LSU has 3 roster spots open for next year, and you better believe Will Wade is going to fill them, just like he did last year. Now, one of the things that they're sort of talking about around the program is that they'll probably go get a true transfer, someone that's going to have to sit out a year. You saw this past year with Kavell Bigby Williams. He was the long rim protector from Oregon, was on that Final Four team a few years back from Oregon, transferred, sat out this year, but he's going to be eligible coming up this next season. So I would anticipate LSU adding a transfer somewhere to fill one of those roster spots. Don't rule out them dipping into the grad transfer market or even JUCO, just like they did this past year to fill roster spots. Will Wade's going to identify guys that are going to buy into his concept. And you're going to need team guys, glue guys, to match with the 5-star lottery picks like Emmett Williams. And I don't know if Javonte Smart's going to be a one and done, but Darius Days is coming in as well, 5-star. When you got that type of Naz Reid, when you got that type of talent, you're going to need the role players, the team guys, the glue guys around him. I think Will Wade's going to add a couple of those. I don't have any doubt that he's going to fill those roster spots. Like he will. Like he's not. And one of the things our colleague Charles Hanegraaff, one of the things he always used to say was like, you fill, because Trent Johnson would would literally not use all the scholarships. So he'd have an empty chair. And, Hannah Griff would say, the empty chair doesn't have 5 fouls. You go get a warm body to fill that chair, because at least that warm body's got 5 fouls to give. If you need to put him in the game to go foul somebody, you can get something out of that guy. You better believe Will Wade's going to fill that spot. So, all right, it's not after further review, excuse me. It's Morning Scone. Putting a button here on Morning Scone. Join us today for After Further Review. Mike Detillier is on the show today, as he is every Thursday. We'll have a spring football practice report out at LSU from Jordy Collada, and of course we'll talk much more about the Pels and Portland. So, in the meantime, y'all have a great day. Any suggestions at all, fire away. I've gotten a lot of questions, so something I'll start doing is I'll try to do pretty regularly is sort of a mailbag. So if you have a question, I'll answer it in a video and post it. So just look for mailbag postings here. Subscribe to the channel, set the notification, so anytime something posts, you get a notification that it's there. All right, y'all have a great Thursday. Appreciate you for tuning in to this edition of Morning Scone.